Good morning. I'm Linda Jamison, the Executive Vice President of the United States Institute of Peace, and it's my pleasure to welcome you here today for the Women Leading Change in Transitioning Societies event. I'd like to also extend a very special welcome to the global awardees, the leadership awardees. For those of you who are new to USIP, I just want to tell you a little bit about our mission. Our mission is to manage, prevent, and resolve violent conflict by empowering others on the ground and also here at our headquarters facility with the knowledge, the skills, and the resources to directly involve them in the process of peace building. USIP is very active on the ground right now in some of the most challenging conflicts in Iraq and Afghanistan, also in Libya, in Yemen, in South Sudan, and also in Colombia. We collaborate with partners on the ground, and it's our key goal to welcome another partner today, which is Vital Voices. I want to tell you that USIP wasn't the first organization involved in conflict resolution to recognize the centrality of gender in the process of peace building, but it has become a very dominant methodology in the course of our work. Since 2009, USIP has made gender an explicit focus of our work, and we created the Center for Gender and Peace Building here at USIP, directed by my colleague, Kathleen Keenest. She coordinates the existing projects, but also is developing and innovating new projects. USIP promotes women's participation in peace building in 4 overlapping roles: as a convener, an intellectual catalyst, facilitator, and trainer. For the last 15 years, one of those key catalysts has been Vital Voices. Vital Voices grew from a small NGO with just 1 employee to an outreach network of 144 countries, encouraging and mentoring women to become agents of change in their own countries and to their governments. Vital Voices has ignited a creative and very inclusive approach to bring women leaders of the world together, working in close collaboration to close the political participation in countries all over the world. We want to warmly welcome you here today, especially you, Alyse, and also acknowledge your book. Alyse has a book coming out, as you may know, Vital Voices, The Power of Women Leading Change Around the World. She was just telling me that she will be soon off to work on her book, and I hope you all have a chance to take a look at it. The book actually starts, if you don't mind me saying a few words about it, the book starts with the premise that women's progress is global progress. I think all of us would agree on that. But it also confirms and exhibits that contemporary women leaders are now modeling new ways of leadership. Alyse, I know you're going to be introducing our other partner, the Embassy of Norway, as well as others, and I'd like to turn the podium over to you now and extend a warm welcome to all of you.
Well, good morning, and thank you, Linda, and thank you to USIP for really opening up this spectacular space for, I think, a very, very important discussion, and one that I think is particularly timely. I also really want to thank dear Kathleen, who is just an extraordinary advocate, partner, and friend to Vital Voices, and I think to the women of the world. So thank you for your great work and certainly for your partnership. So over the last 15 years, Vital Voices has been identifying, investing in, and enabling women's leadership. And I think what we've seen is really some extraordinary trends. You know, as Linda mentioned, we've worked across 144 countries. We've worked with political leaders, human rights leaders, women who are driving economic change and opportunity. But what's fascinating is there are some commonalities and trends. And what this book and this discussion will talk about is these 5 traits, these 5 principles of women's leadership. There's so much discussion today and a great growing body of research looking at the power of women as an economic force to be tapped. And what we at Vital Voices know and have seen, and this, I think this discussion will really showcase, is that women are also a tremendous leadership force as well. We know if we look around the world, we're facing tremendous difficulties. We are facing growing inequities. We are seeing countries trying to recover from economic crisis. What we know is that the status quo in leadership is no longer working. But what we also know is that women bring something different to the table as leaders. And what we believe is that that difference, that inclusiveness, that cause-drivenness, that ability to cross lines that typically divide, those traits, those abilities are exactly what our world needs to heal. The women that you're going to meet this morning through this discussion are all Vital Voices honorees. They're going to be honored tomorrow at the Kennedy Center at a huge gathering at the Opera House. There's still a few tickets left if you're interested in joining us and are not already planning to. And I think they exemplify this model. They are revolutionaries. They are women who are writing and rewriting constitutions. They are creating markets and opportunities where there were none, and they are healing nations. So I very much look forward to the discussion. I'm sure you will enjoy hearing from them. I really want to thank, of course, USIP, but also our partners at the Royal Norwegian Embassy. And with us today is Lars Henny. He's the Minister Counselor for Economic Affairs. And I'm going to now turn the podium over to him. Thank you for your support.
Thank you, Alyse. We continue to be impressed by the work of Vital Voices, which we consider to be one of our key partners in the work we do, not just in the United States, but globally. I just want to point out the obvious. I'm not a woman. And I just want to say a few words about that, because that's actually part of our policy. We want to signal that we do not consider gender equality to be a special interest. In our diplomacy, it's a national interest. That's why we have an ambassador at large in Oslo, based in Oslo. His name is Frederick. He's responsible for gender issues. He travels to all these international conferences on gender equality. And he always calls us a stir, because it's not usual to have a person named Frederick at these meetings. But that is, gender diplomacy is actually we think it's important to send some signals that men also should take part in this struggle, and it is important for all of us that we do. And I'd also like to say that it's very inspiring to be in the same room as so many strong and courageous women. It's a little bit intimidating in a way, because it's the drama of what is going on and the stories you have to tell is just stunning. And you have achieved so much in so many ways. You have set great examples. Norway is very pleased to be a small sponsor of this meeting and to help set focus on what women can achieve. We think that attention to gender can bring entirely new degrees of democratic inclusiveness and faster and more sustainable economic growth. My own country is strongly committed to gender equality, and we do believe that women's empowerment is the key to social, economic, and political development, also to cultural development. We believe that the greatest gains countries can achieve economically and in other ways come with empowering women, and it has indeed been vital to our own development strategy. We know that transitions can be great opportunities to redress gender inequities and injustices of the past and transform gender relations for the future. We also know that it can be extremely difficult. We see in Egypt now a wholesale marginalization of women in the transition process, which is very disappointing. We see all over the Arab world a struggle where some very strong forces want to return to the traditional status of women, which they see as a symbolic return to so-called traditional values. It is a great concern. But We should never forget that in rebuilding communities and economies and societies, we cannot afford to let women's capacities go underutilized. And many fast-growing economies can trace much of their success to women's increased role in production and trade and in society. And with that, I just want to thank you for the attention and wish you a very rewarding discussion. Good.
Good morning, I'm Kathleen Keenest. I direct the Center for Gender and Peace Building here at the United States Institute of Peace. And I'm going to invite our first panel up here while I just say a few prefatory remarks. So Sumar, Rosanna, Adi, if you could join us on the podium here or at the stage, great. And we'll begin our first panel. I do want to just say, again, thank you to Alyse Nelson and Mr. Lars Henny for your efforts in making today's event possible. We will make sure that after each of the panels, there's plenty of time for Q&A or comments from the audience. We have mics already set up, so I hope you will think of this as a really participatory process. I would like to ask you, because we are webcasting near and far, if you wouldn't mind silencing your iPhones, Blackberries, or anything else that might make some beautiful or not so beautiful sound. Thank you. Are the mics on? Are they working? Yes? No? Yes. Okay, great. Well, we're going to begin this panel, and I have asked each of our honorees today if they might set the scene and introduce themselves, as well as really looking at the experiences or opportunities that brought them into the leadership role they play in their respective societies. One of the concrete lessons that Alyse Nelson, in her Vital Voices book, speaks to is that really leaders are not necessarily born, but they really are made from these opportunities and experiences. And so I thought, just to set the scene here today, I'm going to ask each of them to talk about some of this background. Samar, would you like to begin?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you so much. My name is Samar Minalla. I'm from Pakistan, and I'm a documentary filmmaker. I studied anthropology at the University of Cambridge, and I used to write for different newspapers in Pakistan on various women rights issues. And of course, these were all in English. So I just realized that the people that I was trying to reach out to, they could not read English. So I switched over to documentary filmmaking. And I started making documentaries in regional languages in Pakistan. And that was back in 2003. It was just an experiment at that time. And my first documentary was in Pashto language. And my experience of using that particular documentary as a tool for awareness raising was something that was actually that led to my being a documentary filmmaker till today, because that was an amazing experience for me. I realized that if you take these documentaries to the communities, to the rural areas, and use them as a tool to generate awareness and dialogue, that could actually help in breaking silence around issues that we usually don't talk about publicly or openly in Pakistan. So that was something that for me has been a positive experience. I'm still making documentaries in Pakistan, and I would say that one of the strengths in my work is that I work with the communities. Those are the voices that I try to highlight through my documentaries, because I feel that the audience that I'm trying to reach out to, they should be involved in the making of that documentary if I really want to bring about a change in Pakistan.
Can you give us just a little bit more? Give us maybe one of your documentaries, a theme. What did you work on?
There have been several issues that I have highlighted, but there was a time when the schools in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa in Pakistan and Afghanistan were being targeted, girls' schools. And there was this narrative that education is like un-Islamic, or girls were not being sent to school. So that was when I made a video which is called A Lullaby for You, My Daughter. Like traditionally, lullabies are made for sons, but this was a traditional lullaby which for the first time, with the help of some local poets, we made this special lullaby dedicated to girls, and trying to highlight the importance of education for girls in this region. But the images that you would see in that video is fathers taking their little daughters to schools, like the schools are made of mud, but there are these positive images of fathers encouraging their daughters to go to school, or positive images of teachers in rural areas encouraging little girls to study in a village school. So that particular video is being shown on the TV channels of Afghanistan. It's being shown on one of our regional TV channels. And people just, somehow owned that video because it's a famous folk song. There are these positive images that they see, and yet there's a very important message that I've been trying to highlight through this video. That's
a
one
great example. I'm going to wrap back around because there are many more questions I have for you.
Sure.
Thank you, Summer. Please, we are happy to have you here, Rosanna Shah. Would you like to talk about your work and a little about your background?
Thank you. My name is Rosanna Shack. I'm from Monrovia, Liberia, West Africa. And I'm the executive director of a local NGO called Touching Humanity in Need of Kindness, or THINK. And we started this organization in response to getting involved in the restoration of human dignity in our country. THINK was founded towards the end of our Civil War, but I had the opportunity of doing research on the war experiences of women and girls in Liberia back in 1994. Our war lasted for 14 long years, and in 1994, our country was divided. The greater Monrovia area was under a small form of government, and a larger part of the country was controlled by our various rebel factions. And being a nurse by profession, I found myself wearing many hats. I was a public health nurse, but I turned out to be a midwife. I did 32 deliveries in my community. I turned out to be a social worker, and I was a mother, and then I found myself leading a small group of 33 people from one point of safety to another. And all of these experiences really stirred up something in me. Are we going to be hopeless and stay in poverty and just, a state of no hope, or will we rise up? And I felt this urge of taking the information I had gotten from the women and girls we interviewed to see how we could help. But one situation stood out to me. A lot of times we hear about child soldiers and people think of men and boys. But according to the United Nations formal disarmament, we had 2,000 girls who formally disarmed to the UN peacekeepers. And I had the opportunity to work with a small project in southeastern Liberia on rehabilitating child soldiers. And the first funding came for boy child soldiers. But looking at the information I had, I told my partner and friend, I said, you know what, let's ask UNICEF to put in funding for girls. Because there are many issues that surround girls and women. They are used as wives, they were sex slaves, they were young mothers, you know, and a whole lot of things. And plus the fact that girls had less opportunity to continue school. Though in Liberia, there's no limit to say girls don't go and boys go, but when the resources are small, the boys are sent to school first, and then girls can go if they want to. But then by that time, this girl has reached puberty, and the instances of early marriage and other factors keep her back, and she doesn't go too far in school. So I saw this as a burden on my part. Here I am, a woman. I had the opportunity to go to school. I'm a nurse. And why can't I use what I have to help my people around me? And so I asked the other two women in my community to join me to found this organization. And we have been able to be a beacon of hope to young women, making sure that we take in girls who are already mothers and making an opportunity for them to go to school so that the future of our country can include the women and girls, because I feel that women have a better outlook on life, and there are other things that we can contribute when it comes to the recovery process of my country. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you just give us one little snapshot of some of those girls that you worked with? Just name one of them. You don't have to give us her name, but just what happened through the process of Think?
When I went out to recruit these girls, they lived with their fighting force generals. And one girl really stood out to us because she was a commander of her group. She was probably 20 at the time that I met her, but she was taken into the fighting forces when she was 7.5 years old, when her town was captured by the MPFL. And by the age of 9, she was trained to be a bodyguard for the general who was in charge of that portion of Western Liberia. And she became so powerful that even as a small girl between the age of 9 and 11, if she said you could not see her boss, you didn't see her boss. That's how powerful she was. And because she was short, she wasn't given an AK or a Beretta right away, but she was given a pistol. And if she just cocked her pistol, you know, everybody knew to keep their distance. Well, when I saw her, she had a lot of excuses to give me. She wanted to go to school, yes, but she said, you know, I have a son. And I said, you know, our program is designed to take in you and your son. And she looked at me doubtingly because, you know, they were used to being used to do things that older people didn't want, or she felt I wanted to eat off her back. And I said, just come with us and try this for, you know, a week or so, and if you don't like it, you can leave. Well, by the end of 9 months, she was the point winner in her group. She did tailoring as a source of livelihoods training. And up till today, we are still in contact with her. Her son he has just passed to the 7th grade. And she's doing well. She is attending night school herself because her aim is to get out of high school. We've had 2 other girls who came in the second group after her that graduated from high school last year. And so keep in touch with them and helping them to keep on track and achieving goals that they have set for themselves has been rewarding for us.
Thank you for sharing that. I think it really visualizes the effort you're making there. Adi, from Samoa, can you tell us about what you're doing in your country?
Of course. Good morning, everyone. My name is Andi Maimalanga Tafunai. I'm from Samoa, a very small country in the South Pacific. And the situation in Samoa is that we're very isolated, very small. We're now living in a cash economy, but we don't have the opportunities to earn the cash in Samoa where we live. So many young people leave and go to work overseas and send money back home. In the early 90s, we actually, a group of women got together to form an organization because we were interested in business ourselves. But at that time, our country experienced 2 devastating cyclones which destroyed the agriculture in the country, which is really all we have for our economy. And then a few years later, we experienced a blight which affected our taro, which was the main food, our staple food, and our main export crop. So the organization we set up, which is called Women in Business Development, decided that we would work with people who lived in the rural villages to try to find opportunities for them to earn an income where they lived and not leave. When we first started out, there were actually no income-generating opportunities. We actually could not find one. And it took us quite a while to just look at what we had. And then we realized that we did have agriculture. It was all we had. So we thought about adding value to the products that we had. And then to looking around for markets. There weren't markets locally. If there were very few and very small. So we decided to look outside and look at exports, which at the time was something that nobody thought we would be able to do. As it happened, we did find a market, or the market found us. We had an awesome product, the virgin coconut oil, which we had certified organic. And the Body Shop, which some of you may know, which is a very large cosmetics company in the United Kingdom, which has a really great community trade program around the world. At the time, they had nothing in the Pacific, but they needed to find this virgin coconut oil. So they came out and they found us, and we established a really great relationship with them, to the extent now that the quantities that they require keeps growing, and we need to look more outside of Samoa, which is what we're doing now, and trying to establish relationships with other small Pacific countries so that we can perhaps share this market and other markets for the other few products that we have, and we do have a number of other products. Thank you.
Adi, do you think that there was something about your leadership as a woman that made this kind of collaboration happen? Can you talk a little bit about who your partners were and how you really got, the kind of trust and buy-in from your community?
Okay, for a situation where we live, not only the isolation, but we don't have the opportunities ourselves to move. We had some awesome donors in the New Zealand government, Oxfam New Zealand, you may all know about Oxfam International, who supported the work that we did. But I think the big thing about it was just knowing that we had to keep working, that we kept making mistakes, but learning from these mistakes and understanding that it was really the mistakes that we made that built us up into the strong force that we became. And we say that we're known now, internationally, which is really strange for us coming from a very small country, for the work that we do. And when people talk about the things that we do, we tend to focus on, we think, gosh, they think that that did well, but we think about we had to go through so much to get there. And it was these real, I think, being a leader, recognizing that things are not going to work all the time, and looking at the things that didn't work and turning them into positives, learning from them, and making those things move us into bigger and better things.
Well, that's such a lead-in. Can you give us one example, concrete example of something that you had hoped to have gone right, but it went kind of a left-hand turn, and you had to figure out how to navigate your way back?
Well, in the beginning of what we did, nothing went right. With coconut oil, we didn't know about business. We didn't know about how we were going to do this thing. When we found out about the coconut oil, we were excited. Here was a business idea. So off we went to produce coconut oil. And we produced really, really huge quantities of this awesome product. And then there were no markets. So we kept giving people expectations, which was very hard then to go back to them and tell them, well, sorry, we can't sell your oil. So that kept happening. And I think another thing too was, everybody talks about access to finance. And when they talk about access to finance, it's all about microcredit and trying to give people loans. And, when you're working in vulnerable societies and trying to get them into these situations, the last thing you want to do is get them into a situation where they owe money before they even start earning money. So, we realized that we had to find something different. And where there were a large number of aid donors that came into Samoa, we wanted to talk to them, to tell them about what we were doing and saying, if you put your money into buying this family an oil press or just some equipment to set up, rather than lending them some money to go and do this business, which, trying to pull them into business. Most of the people we work with are really pre-business, and they've got to learn this. So once they're earning money on a regular basis, we've got to go then and teach them some kind of financial literacy, because we're really changing people's mindsets with the work that we do.
One of the traits of transformative leadership that Alyse Nelson talks about in her book, Vital Voices, is that women are confronted with tough challenges, but they put forward audacious ideas, take bold risks to improve the lives of others, which, Adi, that really sounds like so much of what you were doing and still are doing. I'm going to turn back to Summer now and talk about some of these audacious ideas and bold risks and put them in the context of the work you're doing. And I will ask you next, Rosanna.
Like when you're working on human rights issues, it does get risky at times. But again, it's, your interest, your passion. If you really believe in something, if you're really passionately interested in something, then the risks always go into the background. Like an issue that I personally am very interested in, and my first documentary was made on this particular form of culturally sanctioned form of violence. It's called Swara. Whenever there's a murder committed by anyone, mostly in tribal settings, a girl is given as compensation to end the dispute. Like she's the one who ultimately pays the price for a crime committed by her brother or her father. So that was the issue which I felt needed to be highlighted through documentary. That was the first issue that I wanted to highlight through my work. And that was a difficult issue to highlight because these kind of issues are usually seen as private issues. And like getting people to talk about these issues is always very difficult. But being a woman, I did the filming myself. I interviewed quite a few women and little girls who were being given as compensation. So I had this, like as a woman filmmaker, I had this edge that I could take these voices to the policymakers, to audiences in general in Pakistan, to let everyone know that this custom is taking place in Pakistan. And this documentary was made in 2003, and then with the help of civil society organizations, we lobbied for legislation. In 2004, a law was made. Now whoever gives or takes girls as compensation can be arrested for 3 to 10 years. Then the same documentary was seen and used as evidence in a public interest litigation that was filed by me against this custom in the Supreme Court. And this documentary is still being used for awareness raising throughout Pakistan. Like before coming to Pakistan, I visited one of the tribal areas called Mohammed Agency. And this young boy came up to me. He said that we are working on this issue, Swara, in our community. So I said, what do you do? He says, we use a documentary which is in Pashto, and that documentary is then shown to the tribal leaders, to the religious scholars, and then dialogue is generated. So I said, I've made the documentary. He said, you have? So that was, something that really made me very happy. Those are, exactly the kind of little joys and moments of happiness that, completely takes the risks or whatever challenges we face to the background. So that's just not at all an issue or an option.
It's a great story. But I have to ask you, again, in your film, we haven't seen it, but tell us one story of one of those little girls.
Okay. By the way, most of my films are available on YouTube because they are not for commercial purposes. They are for advocacy and awareness raising. So whoever is interested, they can get an access to the videos. Once I visited like a village in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa in an area called Mardan. And there was this father who had some idea that I'm working on this issue. And he came up to me, he said that today a tribal jirga or a tribal council is going to sit and they're going to decide that my 8-year-old girl should be given as compensation to the enemy's family. And this man had like literally tears in his eyes. He didn't know what to do because he had to comply by the decision of the tribal leaders. So I went up to this tribal leaders and I asked them if I could, attend their jirga. And they said, yes, you can come. So I just said to them that, Islam is completely against this custom. Even legally, there's no place for this particular custom. And then there's this father who does not want his little girl to be given as compensation. And according to Islam, you have the option of a monetary compensation. So I said, I just, leave the decision to you, but I have full faith in you that you will give a just decision. And then an hour later, I was told that they have decided that monetary compensation would be demanded. So just going to this man and just to tell him that that was the decision, I had the camera with me. I wanted to capture his feelings. So I said to him that, that is what they've decided. So I still have that in one of my documentaries, and It was, such a nice experience for me. And that's exactly, I work with men from these communities. I believe that when we're working on women's rights or issues like violence against women, we cannot move forward unless we engage men. We have, role models from these communities. They are the real heroes, the real change makers. For me, this father was a hero who said that I don't want my daughter to suffer. So we have to work with such people.
Oh, well put. It's so true. We need to all go forward together. And often we do leave men out of our storyboard, and yet that's why gender perspectives really tries to capture both. I'm glad you mentioned that, and thank you for sharing that story. The audacious idea of money instead of a girl. I like that. Rosanna, how about you? Audacious ideas, bold risks that you could share with us through kindness. I'm so taken with the name of your NGO. The kindness is in its name.
Yes, for us, it's looking at gender-based violence, but also looking at, as Samuel said just now, incorporating both the men and the women, boys and girls. When we started out, we had a huge issue of anger and resentment and just hate for one another, either tribally or because you were aligned to a certain faction. And we looked at the whole issue of forgiveness. Our children were violated against by even being pulled into this war to become combatants. And so we looked at the issue of children being victims as well as perpetrators. And it wasn't that it was a willingness to kill somebody, but the more crimes you committed, you were elevated. And we tried to take that as something to help our girls that came in to forgive themselves first. Because if you don't forgive yourselves, you're not going to be able to move forward. And when we started the home, we had funding from Samaritan Spurs. They were gracious enough to raise funding for us to start this home. And we had to prepare the community to accept that we were going to bring a girls' rehabilitation home in that community. Some people said, no, we don't even want to see this certain tribe anymore. We need to see how we can take them out of Liberia. Some said, no, they brought us into a state. They took everything from us. They've killed our relatives, And then we said, you know what? There is no bad bush, according to Liberian folklore, mores, they're saying there is no bad bush to throw away your child. And so all we have to do now is to find why did we end up where we were. And we know that violence against women and girls were used as a weapon of war. And even after we are in the peace stage now, we are still experiencing violence against women and girls, either through domestic violence or sexual violence. And when we bring it to the community level in focus group discussions, why do you think these instances are still happening? Then it comes to play that maybe our roles feel threatened. Maybe our male counterparts are not being brought on board as being a part of a solution and are always blamed. And if you look at violence against women and girls and only focus on the female, of course the males feel threatened, and that's the only way they're going to tell you, I am still in power. I'm going to beat you. I'm going to keep money away from you. I'm going to do this, this, and this. And so we have found out that involving the community, having people to understand really what gender is not only a women's issue. It's issues that affect men, women, boys, girls, disabled people, old people, but those are roles and responsibilities ascribed to us by our culture. And once we can understand what those roles and responsibilities are, where are our limitations when it comes to my rights, mine and where yours begin. And so helping our people to go through this process at their pace. We have instances of harmful traditional practices that we're trying to address in Liberia right now. And some of us get overambitious and want it to happen tomorrow, but it can't. These things are practices that have happened for generation to generation, and it's going to take time for that change to occur. And looking at it through a culturally sensitive way, we will move faster than you're saying, okay, let's have a law made that tomorrow FGM stops, or let's have a law made that early and forced marriage stops. No, but let people see what is the harm that's being done to our girls when their childhood is cut off short. What is the harm being done physically to our girls who are going through the practice of FGM or FGC, female genital cutting, at a very early age? She's going to have difficulties when she gets married. She's going to have difficulties when it's time for her to have children. And when we see where the problem lies together, then we're going to be able to move forward.
That's such a nice model that you lay out there. And this idea of timeliness and taking your time. And I'm going to ask Addie my last question, and I'm going to ask the audience if you have questions or comments to go ahead to the microphones on either side, and we'll also have people who can pass the microphones. Addie, I want to go back to this timeliness, because you spoke about this idea of pre-business. And I think that this is something that seems very important, that so often international helpers and donors really do want to make a contribution and make a difference. But how can we do a better job of understanding that zone where most all of the relationships were not built on cash, they were built on reciprocity. You know, I have this, you can give me this. How do international actors come to understand a different meaning of how everyday society works in a non-cash society?
I think what's important is that people understand that in every situation, in every country, there's a culture that people have lived for generations, and also to understand that one size does not fit all. You know, if you think about microfinance and how it was developed in Bangladesh for societies where there's millions of people, where there's a marketplace. And, you know, we now have really big organizations coming out to the Pacific and thinking that's the answer. And they bring this model to us, and, you know, we're small, isolated communities where we don't even have a market, where, you know, you can't sell things. So I think, you know, it's basically that understanding and just looking at the research and going a little bit further than just the people that you normally talk to. We often say that because we're an NGO and we're small, we're not really heard. And even when we are heard, they don't take us seriously. We've had really top business people come in and want to help, but they send in business consultants who want to turn the village people into business people. And, you know, you can't do that because they don't understand the business sense, that you've got to start from the ground and just nurturing them along before they get into a stage where they are doing business. So it's just understanding the culture.
Listening. Well, now we're going to listen to some of the members of our audience who have questions. I have 3 standing at mics, and perhaps for those, will we pass the mic, Brooke, at all? Because we have some people here. Okay, what I'm going to ask you to do is introduce yourself, where you might be located in the universe, and very brief question or comment. Thank you.
Good morning. Irina Akimushkina, consultant on gender issues for international organizations. First of all, thank you so much for such a great panel. I have 2 questions. One to Samar and
just one second, Irina. I think because we have so many questions, we can only do one right now. Just so everyone has
to Samar, it's about her documentaries. You mentioned that it's important to target men. Do you think in future to make some documentaries appealing to men to change some kind of stereotypes looking at women in patriarchal society, and also if there is any opportunity to go to television, public television with your movies. And my question to Samoa,
one question.
just, you know, I was in your country, and I just wanted to say, do you think it's realistic to bring tourists? I know you have New Zealand tourists, but from United States, and to have tourist business for your organization? Sorry.
What I'm going to do is take 3 questions and then give the panelists a moment to think about it. So could I have the next question? We'll go back and forth.
Okay, does it work? Does it work?
Just put it next to your...
This is a comment.
Your name, please.
It's a comment. I just want to bring the issue of empowerment home.
Could you introduce yourself, please?
Oh, sorry. Yeah. My name is Fabienne Ipsuma, and I'm a filmmaker. And I want to bring this issue of empowerment home because yesterday I was privileged to see a documentary from fellow filmmakers called The Invisible War. And it's about the level of rape in the US Army. And my heart is broken. So I encourage you to see this film because it's about, again, it's home, and it's empowering women to speak up and to have an army that is as respectable as we all wish it could be. And the film is going to be out, I think the opening weekend was June 22nd. And really, it's important, I think, for all of us who are hearing a story from abroad and very far, to bring also the question of who we are here, and to have this immense body, which is the US Army, being proud of itself.
Thank you. And one more question before we move back to our panelists. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Maria Levitsky. I'm a writer. My question, first of all, is to bring attention to the timeliness issue that is very relevant to our current times. You mentioned that we have a debate going on delaying, or do we bring it on? Do we rush forward to solutions? And this is, I think, a global issue. How does an individual, be it a man or a woman, living in a community, not wait for solutions to be put on a shelf, but empower themselves?
Great, thanks so much. Summer, I'm going to ask you to talk about the stereotypes, and Rosanna and Adi, maybe you could address the last question. Okay. Thank you.
For the question whether my videos, they're being shown on TV channels, public TV channels, yes. Most of them have been shown. In fact, they're repeatedly being shown, especially the folk songs, because they're at times being demanded by the audiences. And yes, for me, men, I do target men as a very important audience in my videos, because when I interview women and when I give them a voice through my documentaries, it is an effort to change the stereotypes, to challenge those stereotypes, to change the mindsets, because women are always seen as victims in documentaries, in videos, or as, sex symbols. But when, in my documentaries, you'll see women who are articulate, who personify confidence, strength. So that is exactly in order to challenge a particular stereotype or a mindset. And then in order to do that, like there's a folk song which is called Bibi Shirine, and the poetry goes that Bibi Shirine, come my beloved, like addressing to a woman, come cover me with a shawl, I'm feeling cold, and man asking for all these favors from a woman. So I asked a poet if we can change the poetry into Bibi Shirine, we respect what you do from morning till night. It's a very catchy song. I knew men would love it, but the messages and the images are something that actually acknowledges what a woman, a rural woman, does from morning till evening, contributing to her society economically, socially, but which is not recognized. So this song at times is played in weddings and men are dancing to it, but they don't realize what powerful message it is giving and the way woman is being respected through this video. So that's
an audacious idea and a bold risk. Let me talk about this last question about timeliness briefly, because we have many other questions and a few minutes left.
Okay, for timeliness, we have found that there is strength in unity. And when you can mobilize a large number of people to come on board with your advocacy, then you get a little more speed. But, sometimes things take longer when we individualize issues, and it will be my cause, and I'm not bringing my sisters on board or even my brothers to come and join me. It takes longer. We had the experience with the inheritance law in Liberia. It took us 13 years for that law to be passed. But when it came to the rape law, as soon as our president was elected in 2006, she made that a priority, that there should be a rape law, and everybody took it seriously because the president said, and everyone wanted to have, her on their side, and that issue was taken, and right away, 2006, the rape law was passed, though we had to take certain phrases out of it, but we have a rape law. The children's law, the child protection law, took 4 years, but what we have found is when you have more people on board pushing that issue, you get faster, results.
Great examples. I really appreciate that. Adi?
I think the same, but you think again about how cultures differ and how people who live and who haven't been used to anything, even to understanding what's happening in the world today, that they need to be empowered, and so they will need to be empowered before anything like this, any changes can happen. And I think in a situation where you live in countries like the Pacific, where we are so isolated, it's something really important to kind of lobby or get our politicians, our leaders, interested in the things that we do, the things we want changed. And in doing that, we've managed to, get policies built around quite a number of things. We've managed to take organics around the Pacific region through lobbying our leaders and getting the most sympathetic leaders to talk. Because as soon as a leader talks, people follow. And I think that's important if you're trying to make changes.
Thanks, Adi. Okay, I'm going to go through all the questions, and Brooke, we have also one person right here who's right in the center. But we'll start, shall we start here and come down, and then we'll come to the third. And
Hi.
I'm going to, yes, thank
Hi,
you.
good morning. My name is Alexandra, and I'm from El Salvador, a part of the chapter of El Salvador Vital Voices. One of the most powerful messages that I've heard today is how we need to sit with the masculine gender to help us in this sharing of power, distribution of power. And the question that comes to mind is, what are the most effective ways to bring this consensus or convincing of sharing of power, especially in Latin countries where there is a stigma of machismo, and where the power still lies in great proportion in men. How do you convince? What are the most effective ways that you have encountered to convince men of this sharing of power and how this benefits all of us?
Thanks, Alexander. And we're going to go right here to the front row, this woman has been waiting patiently. Thank you. Thanks, Brooke. All right.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Rosemary Sekero. I'm the president of Hope for Tomorrow. We focus on women empowerment. And so my question is to you, Rosanna. Looking at what you have said from Liberia, I'm initially from Kenya. What do you see and what can you tell the African leaders and other women, especially the violence that occur into communities and in elections? What would be your message today to the world leaders? Because my nephew was killed in the Kenya violence 27. I'm on campaigning to see that we have no violence in the next election. What could you tell the African women and the leaders in Africa? And USIP, what are you doing when it comes to violence prevention and protection on the ground? We are having a lot of problems around the world. Women and children are the victims. What do you do? And what can you tell the world that would be your most important word to see that there is no violence in election and especially in conflict countries? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please.
Cynthia Schneider. I teach diplomacy and culture at Georgetown and work in cultural diplomacy. And I am so fascinated, Samara, at how you have so effectively used not only filmmaking, but also the local folkloric culture. And I wonder if you could talk about that in a couple of respects. One, how do your films get out there? I know they're on television, but then passed around the rural areas. How does that happen? How seriously do policymakers and the courts in Pakistan then take your films and ideas? What happened in your case with the Supreme Court? And who funds you? Do you have any Western funding? Is there any understanding on the part of, say, the United States of what you're doing?
Great. Thanks, Cynthia. Our next question.
My name is Fatma Haider. I'm from Nairobi, Kenya. I still live in Nairobi. I'm here visiting relatives, but I'm also going to attend a training on leadership, which is going to be held in DC. I'm going to repeat the same thing which my former Kenyan has put it. I mean, the 2007-2008 has really tried so many women. We still have women in camps, in the internally displaced camps. So I'm asking if USIP is doing anything in Kenya. As she mentioned, we're going to have elections soon. Is there anything on the ground which is going to help women in particular and the girl child? I'm impressed by all the panelists. Thank you so much. You really did a good presentation. But more important is the lady from Samoa. I mean, I'm coming from Mombasa originally, and we have all these women with all the coconut which is there, but nothing is being used to make a difference. And this connection between the coconut oil and the body shop, I would really want to know more. So I hope we'll have time to talk about later. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That's great. And our last question, and then we're going to leave it to the panelists to say a few final remarks.
My name is Veronica Carrier. I'm an American, as a mediator and a consultant for international affairs. First, thank you so much for ladies. You have given so much courage to empower women in your country. And I understood that you have empowered them also through education. But my question is, in the rule of law, just like in Pakistan, because of the swara and your courage, then your government put penalty or punishment to practice swara. How about in Liberia? Is that your government support the law reform, the rule of law for child slaves or child soldier, as well as in Samoa? How the government supported or the law reform to provide access to improve the women ability to own business. Would you please talk about the law reform in your countries? Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I'm going to ask our panelists to select one or two of the questions to respond to, and as your final remarks, we're going to bring an end to this, what has been, I think, a really remarkable panel. I will just respond to two people who asked about our work in Kenya. We have been working on violence prevention there for 4 or 5 years, doing training specifically around violence prevention in elections. We're doing that in other parts of South Sudan as well. And so I'd be happy to share more of that after the session today. But I'm going to turn Summer, and then we'll walk down there.
I'll quickly respond to one of the questions: how do I convince men to be on board? So since I work through media, I try my best to show them as role models, people who are bringing about change in their communities. I try to highlight those people in my documentaries because it always has a very positive impact. And then besides documentaries, the same messages are then being painted onto trucks in very colorful ways, because a truck goes from one village to another, so it's like a billboard traveling. So again, that needs a lot of effort to convince those people, to get them painted on their trucks and why they say. So the convincing part is difficult, but it does happen at the end. My work, how does the government or Supreme Court help in that way? That was one of the questions. And how is my work funded? As I said, my documentaries are on YouTube, so I use them for awareness raising. My documentaries are funded at times by organizations, like recently the Norwegian Embassy supported one of my documentaries on forced marriages amongst the Pakistani diaspora community. But no, I haven't been funded by the US government for any of the projects. It's just that it depends on the issues that I'm really interested in highlighting. At times, I just do it on my own. Like there was a documentary I did on the impact of bombings in Afghanistan post 9/11, and I knew no one would be interested in financing that project, so I just went ahead and made the documentary and then disseminated it to the target audience. And the government has been extremely supported when it comes to legislation on Swara, and there's a very positive synergy between the government and civil society organizations when it comes to these issues. And the Supreme Court, I have filed a public interest litigation in the Supreme Court, which is still ongoing, and each and every hearing always ends with a very strong directive by the Supreme Court, which is helping in a positive way.
Thank you, Summer.
Yes, to answer my two sisters from Kenya, what our experience has been in Liberia, we had elections towards the end of last year, and we did have instances of electoral violence. But before the elections went on, we did community sensitizations, came up with messages that were played on radio, asking people not to get involved in violence. We made bumper stickers, different spot messages. But also it was getting the rule of law involved. When the violence did occur, if some of the perpetrators were caught, they were sent to court. And in that way, it gave a little bit of faith into what our legal process is. And so we've had a lot of restructuring and law reform going on. There's a law reform commission active in Liberia, but then the Judicial Institute is retraining our lawyers, our judges, magistrates, so we're trying to put more faith into the legal system, so it's not that Senator so-and-so said this or the president said, but the court came to this decision, on this matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosanna.
Okay, just quickly, I'm thinking about the issue with including men in what we're doing. My organization is called Women in Business because we started out as women in business, but we don't work specifically with women. We work with families. And when you do that, when you work with a family, you bring them all in a more holistic way, and you find that you end up with men and women working together. And we find that that's working not only Samoa, but in other places in the Pacific. And just about government and law, and the way things happen in a country. It's really, really different where I come from. We don't really have the issues that I know coming out of, the other women that I'm with. In fact, I sit down and I listen to them and I lose myself in their stories, and it just, affects me. Things are so different where I am. We have different issues. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Well, I hope the audience will join me in recognizing the remarkable stories of these three women. We're going to have a very brief transition. We'll have a 2-minute film that Vital Voices has prepared as our first panel leaves the stage and our second group of panelists come forward. And so if you need a stretch break, please stand up. But we'll go right directly to the next panel.
It starts with a leader. She's got a vision. I could visualize communities living in peace. Financial services for all. 11 million children going to school. She may be well established, or she may be just starting on her path. She could be an entrepreneur, a human rights advocate, or a parliamentarian. She recognizes a problem in her community and she commits to solving it.
Our strategy is to address the urgent needs of the community in the ashes and started to work.
For me, it was an act of patriotism to engage in the peace movement. She takes risks, she struggles, but she keeps at it. She has to change a lot of minds.
I took a political stand to fight for justice for women in Cambodia.
We search the world for these leaders. We see what they do, We see that they know better than anyone what needs to be done, so we invest in them.
Vital Voices kind of sets it up for you. You know, here's the road, here's the opportunity, here's the chance.
How to negotiate, how to reach to the grassroots.
They give you a feeling that nothing is impossible.
Through training and mentoring, we offer new skills and knowledge to help them have greater impact. We connect them with other women leaders.
For me, it was the very first time I was part of the international community.
You see a success story somewhere, and you're inspired, and you say, well, why can't we do it?
Long ago, we discovered something remarkable. Women leaders are multipliers. They take the new knowledge, expertise, and access to networks, and they pay it forward to the next wave of women leaders.
We held our first mentoring program for young women.
Also, we started reaching out to the community. We have to carry that forward and build a chain. It shouldn't stop.
This means that our investments go on and on, beyond us, beyond them, further than any of us can see.
When you invest in somebody, you're transforming that person, and that person can transform other people.
If I can help one person, and that person can help the other person, then it becomes a change.
This is the power of Vital Voices. We don't build anything, we don't give anything away. We find extraordinary women leaders, and we do everything we can to maximize their impact, to extend their reach, and to make the world a safer place, not just for women, for everyone.
Vital Voices give us the exposure, the tools, the platform, but it is our fight.
All right, we're ready for panel 2. This is another powerhouse group of women, as you will soon find out. The title of this panel is Women Leading Change in the Emerging Arab World. And as many of us have termed the Arab Spring, these women have come to us today from a world that's really in serious transition. And we're going to begin this panel, as we did the last time, and asking each of these honorees to introduce themselves and to bring forward the experience or opportunity that brought their lives into this leadership transformation. And so I'm going to begin here with Tunisia.
Yes. So I am Amira Yahyawi. I am from Tunisia. I am a human rights activist and now president of an NGO called Al Bawsala. I work on what the revolution brought to us, which is now a new constitution. So I am the president of the NGO, and our first project is to monitor the work of the Constitutional Assembly in Tunisia and to advocate for human rights on this constitution. What brought me to this? What a question. I haven't chosen to be in what I'm doing now. I am a scientist. I've studied mathematics, and I came from a family of human rights activists, so I think I have it in my blood. It was just impossible to shut up, actually. When you are educated to democracy and living in a dictatorship, you just cannot understand why don't you have the right to say the same thing in your home than outside, and why are you, for example, harassed, or why are members of your family arrested or dying or tortured. So you just cannot have this feeling of fear, and you just cannot shut up.
So perhaps the title of one of Alyse's chapters, that most leaders are not born, you might be the exception. We're going to turn now to you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Marianne Ibrahim. I'm from Egypt. I'm the executive manager of Al Gisr Center for Dialogue and Development. And Al Gisr in Arabic means the bridge. We are working on youth capacity building and interfaith dialogue, basically, campaigning. What brought me into leadership? I'm not sure if I can define myself as a leader in my own country, but my answer to your question is it's passion. What brought me to what I'm doing is passion. I remember in 2010, there was sectarian violence broke out in a coastal city in Egypt called Alexandria. And I remember I was at work, I was working as a journalist back then, and it amazed me that people are dying for no reason, actually. It was stupid, and no one was doing anything about it. Our government was doing nothing, and preachers and religious leaders were not doing anything about it. And they only interfere in a police state only with using security, and after the blood is already being shed. And I realized that people just do not sit and talk about it, which is the reasonable thing to do. If you're having a fight with a friend or a neighbor, the first thing to do is just go and talk and put your heart out. And that what brought me into it. I wanted to sit and talk with the people who I think they hate me, or I feel resentment towards them. And that's what happened. We built our first focus group. We brought Copts or Orthodox Christians from Egypt and Muslims, and we create something like a safe zone. And on that table, there were no red lines. Let's talk about the blood before it's being shed, and about the red lines and the taboos that we're not allowed to talk about in public. Later on, I broadened the scope. I wanted to work with youth, younger girls and boys in my country, helping them making films. They might seem a bit primitive or not well-end films, but you can easily see that their hearts, they just pouring their hearts out, talking about all the issues that they feel they want to deliver a message about these films. Stuff like sexual harassment, stuff like interfaith issues, unemployment, and working with youth was always amazing to me. So what is driving me all the time is passion. I don't do anything I'm not passionate about.
That's well put. Thank you so much.
Wow, it's hard to introduce myself after her. I'm Shada Harazi, human rights and political journalist from Yemen. I'm
Shata, can you move your microphone just a little further?
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. I'm a political and social media activist. I think what brought me here today, it's not because I'm a leader. I like to consider myself more as a voice that succeeds to be heard. And that's what makes me different a little bit or makes me privileged than others in Yemen, is that their voices were not heard before the revolution. And the revolution was a platform or a channel for them to force the political figures in the country and to force the world to hear their issues and to recognize them as a human being. I was motivated to be part of the revolution because of the injustice that we face in Yemen. We're in a country that a tribal leader has the power to exile the whole village just because he feels so. And then activists, human rights activists have to fight him through parliament, through human rights ministry for 5 years without changing anything. Those people had to live in the streets, literally, in what became today Change Square in front of Sana'a University in Sana'a, and no one cared. Like if they don't deserve to be treated as human beings. The idea that the Arab Spring started in Tunisia is kind of irritating for us because we believe that we started the peaceful movement in 2007 when the southern people in Yemen decided to protest peacefully in a country that is actually armed The whole population is armed. We have at least 60 million weapons. So people decided, and it means a lot for us that people decided to go out and protest peacefully. So that happened in 2007, but people didn't think that this deserved to be reported or to talked about. Instead, it's better to talk about counterterrorism and how Yemenis are terrorists and stuff. So that's, for me, is injustice. And then it's again in 2007 when they protested, they were faced by repression. Many of them were detained, many of them were killed by the Yemeni regime, and no one knew about it. Everybody talked about Mohammed Bouazizi as the spark of the revolution. I feel so sympathetic to Mohammed Bouazizi's situation and what he did, but again, we faced a worse situation in Yemen. A local channel that is well watched by the by Yemenis broadcasted once a story about a Yemeni man who actually killed his 7 sons and then suicide because he couldn't gain his right and that was broadcasted. But people did not react to it. They felt sorry for him. They cried watching TV, but they didn't think it's a human being that deserved to be defended, or they can go to the street, or they can do something about it. They lost hope, and they thought this is how other people in the globe would live. So the revolution just gave us this. It's just awakening revolution. It makes us realize what a human being is and what it's worth, and that's why I like to consider myself part of that, and how I find it in my identity nowadays. So,
hello everybody. It's an honor to be here in front of you. My name is Salwa Bougaïgues. I'm a Supreme Court lawyer. I'm one of the few lawyers who carried out cases against the regime on behalf of political prisoners. And it's an honor that one of the famous client is Mr. Ahmed Zubair Sunusi, who was spent 31 and a half years in the prison. And I'm one of the, I was the first woman in the protesting in front of the courthouse on the 17th of February with one of my colleagues. And I was one of the who founded the coalition of 17th of February in Benghazi, who formed the first city council and the first military council, and which led to formation the National Transitional Council. I was representative of the coalition in the NTC, the National Transition Council, for 3 months, and I left the council after that. So shall I continue or?
Well, actually, I'm going to. Yes, we want you to continue, but I have a question for you, Salwa.
Yeah.
And I'm going to ask everyone. You know. This is another part of the book, Vital Voices. They talk about the dangerous work of leadership, and that there is great power to be found in the pain of that kind of day-to-day experience, but that the key to leadership is to harness the power in the pain. And I really would like you to talk about that. You have seen a lot over the last year and a half. And I'm going to pick up exactly where you left off, about February 17th. What was it? And it sounded very dangerous. And what kept you going?
Yeah. I was not talking about just the revolution time, during the revolution, because we suffered for decades. And during 42 years, all the population in the Libya suffered a lot, because I assume that you know that Gaddafi trying to consolidating all the power in his hand and dismantling the various institutes, military, education, and others. he tried to use many tools in our societies, like corruption, for the loyalties from his men, and after that try to blackmail them with it. And we have, we are a rich country, but we have more than 1 million poverty people in our country. We are a small population. 6.5 million is not a huge number like our neighbors in Egypt. During decades, I don't want to tell you that the revolution. There were before that we sacrificed from there were sacrifices from many men during the decades, the 4 decades. But during the revolution, all the people suffered because of what Gaddafi troops did for our people. But maybe because of that, we had the will to continue to go to the end. So in that time, we decided that we will not go back. We will go forward to the end to finish this I don't know. It's something.
Talk about your own decision. Do you remember? Was it one day? Was it many days? But clearly, these were dangerous times. Yeah. What happened inside you? Was it just like something stopped you and said, I need to step forward? Talk a little bit about that in terms of the leadership. I think that's what we're looking for in your story.
Yeah, after, as you know, that the revolution started, on 15th of February, sparked by women. This is a great thing in our revolution. And on the 17th, we start to protesting.
You woke up that morning. What happened? Tell me about your day.
We decided, in that morning, I went normally to the courthouse. I had a case. And after that, we were discussed about, is there anything this morning? So everybody, no, everything's fine. There's nobody in the street. It was 10 o'clock in the morning. And, everybody were discussed about that. Anything will happen after that or not. So after that, I decided to go in front of the courthouse because we protest before that. One month on January 17th, we protest against the regime because of another issue. He did it because that Gaddafi saw that we inspired because of the Tunisian revolution and Egyptian revolution. So we went there. I went there, and I stand, and there were another lawyer with me, and we were asking, where's the people that we were, looking, that we know that something happen. And we stand there for a while, and there were many security, because they were everywhere waiting if there is anything will happen or not. And after that, we were trying to call our colleagues, our friends, just to say, please come, because we didn't appoint that day, but there's many people all around, activists trying to appoint the 17th of February for Anger Day. So in that day, we sat there and we tried to call, as I said, to call the others. And after a while, starting to many more and more. And at the beginning that we were asked for the constitution, for justice, for state of law. After 4 or 5 hours, we heard that one of the youth killed 20 minutes from the courthouse. In that time, it turned from protesting to a revolution. So it was started from, 3 o'clock afternoon, and it didn't finish until we finished. But in that day, you didn't feel that there's fear inside you, that just you want to go to finish your mission. And what I'm proud of, the woman's role in the first and the second day. There were hundreds of women there, and they were encouraged, the men. They were the courthouse, like in this stage, and there's another, from the other side, there were hundreds of men. They were just watching us, and we were encouraging them. There were hundreds of women. They told them, just come and join us. And they were ashamed that they were a woman and they were on the other side. And really, I met many of the men, and they told me that because of you, all the women that were there, that we felt that they were there, and we were watching them. So it's really shame, and it hurts. So after that, after 4 days, we as a group of lawyer judges, and we thought that we have to protect this revolution. We can't just stand in front of the courthouse, and there were thousands and thousands of our population there, and we have to do something. So we decided we made a statement after 4 days, after our brave men, controlled the compound and sacrificed by their lives to liberate the eastern part of country. We did a statement that we win. We want, and that day we want to send a message for the Gaddafi that now we are liberated. Part of your farm is liberated now. We are no more slaves.
I'm going to stop there because that story of harnessing the power of pain is really brought in, and I know that there's a story for each of you, and I want to now, Shata, can you talk about that moment, where you were, what happened when that change happened in your country?
I think when we talk about change, we don't necessarily talk about what change we brought, but we should think about what kind of change that we cannot bring. There is no limitation to the change that we should work forward to. And that idea of change was there all the time. From facing injustice all the time in our daily life, we're always struggling.
Can you give an example from your daily life? Bring it to a very concrete, so we know what you dealt with.
As a student in Sana'a University, for example, you don't have a voice to talk about your rights in front of the professors. You cannot discuss the materials, you cannot discuss what's happening. So, for example, I published this report about university professors harassing female students. And then because of that report, I was prevented from studying journalism.
So they sent you a letter, or you had to go
They
in front
actually started an investigation with me, and they tried to suspend me and a colleague of mine who's the publisher of the newspaper. And then we protested, and a lot of students protested with us. We had media coverage for our for our case, and that's how they ended up not suspending us. We were privileged, but I know other stories like that who weren't, because I knew what's the tools that I should be taking, or what should I do at the moment. That's why they didn't. But then I know many others who faced the same suspicion, but then no one could help them. And
what are these tools? You said you had the tools.
Mobilization.
Talk about that.
I think by now we know that mobilization is the strongest way to topple any dictators or to gain any rights. In Yemen, when we started the revolution, we thought it's only Ali Abdullah Saleh that we wanted to topple. But then we ended up facing many dictators on our daily lives level. So we started different revolution actually in different institutions, which is called today institutional revolution. So students in universities in different colleges would protest and mobilize themselves to change a professor. Others in other ministries were actually well mobilized to gain some of their demands. And it's amazing how this kind of awareness was spread along the country, and even the simplest people that were not privileged to have education also joined and knew that this is the best way to gain their rights. The garbage collectors actually did that as well for 2 weeks, and then they had a decree from the president and from the Yemeni parliament to gain their rights. And that was an amazing thing, that this kind of knowledge was there. And then people, it's again because the revolution found this platform to spread knowledge and to teach people about their rights and what's the means to gain their rights.
What about harnessing in Egypt, harnessing that pain to bring power, as your colleague just talked about?
Okay. Egypt is a very complicated country, and it's huge. In the moments that we that have the privilege of people listening to our stories, that doesn't happen so often, because with millions of people, we as Egyptians, we encounter many stories of courage every day with different aspects of life. And these moments we face even before the revolution. We've been taking the streets years before the revolution. Maybe we're only like 50 or 60 protesters somewhere, but we were out there taking the streets and defying the power of the authority. To be brief, I want to talk about 3 moments, and I was privileged to be on the 3. The first one was in the beginning, January 2010, and I'm not sure if you all know that there was a massacre on the Coptic Christmas Eve in Upper Egypt, and a group of activists, Muslims and Christians, wanted to travel from Cairo to Upper Egypt to pay our condolences, and we were arrested and framed for conspiracy and creating sectarian tension and so on. And before that moment, I was trying, because we're talking about the fear. Before that moment, I was trying to keep all my activities away from home. And I thought a lot before traveling, taking this trip, because my dad had just passed away, like 2 weeks. And I felt that I needed to be there. I didn't tell my mom where I was going, and I just left. And during the ordeal, it took like a couple of days, and we were kidnapped by the state security agents, and we were hidden in a dungeon somewhere in Upper Egypt. And that was the first time. I've been chased and beaten before, but that was the first time I've been arrested. And I wasn't worried about anything except that, what am I going to tell my mom? It's very common in Egypt now that the millions of youth We're not afraid of the state security. We're not afraid of the army. We're afraid of our moms. You don't tell your mom that you're going out on a demonstration unless you will be going back in a coffin. That's something else. And I was ashamed. I didn't know what to tell her. And it was that moment that I decided that for 2 days I've been calling her. We hid a phone in one of our friends' underwear inside the cell, just to let the people know, tweeting and calling our friends and let the people know where we were, because we were kidnapped. And it was that moment that I decided to call her, and I told her, Mom, I got arrested. I'm fine. I still have my clothes on. Everything's fine. I'm not beaten yet, but this is what I have to do. And you have to take it. I have to accept it. That was a turning point in my own life, because all the way from Upper Egypt back to Cairo, I was telling myself that there's no shame of being arrested. You didn't do anything wrong. And whatever is going to happen to you, it's not your fault. And you need to do this to yourself and to the people around you. We were about 7 girls and 13 boys. The second moment was on January 25th at night. And you can easily realize the transformation in the youth. It was that moment when the fear was broken. We managed to gather on the square in large numbers, and people started to chant against the regime, and that was a first. With all the state security and forces around us, and that is a scary scene. And on that night, I didn't know that the regime was going to fall, but I knew that what was happening on the square on that night is something that no one can take away from us. I can go and write a book about that, about the 18 days.
I hope you will.
The third moment was actually a few months ago. There was, after a bloody incident in a street called Muhammad Mahmoud, downtown Cairo. It's a street close to the ministry, the Interior Ministry, and there were meaningless clashes, and 45 young men died for no reason. Simply for no reason. And we thought that it's a bunch of stupid men fighting. And we decided as women to organize a march called Mother's March. And you can imagine the women participating on that march. I've seen posh, upper-class women in their suit and high heels and their hair done. And they just wanted to participate to end the bloodshed. But they didn't know what they were going into, because it was a war zone. Actually a war zone, gunshots, gas all over, rock fights. It was a war zone like those you see in Iraq, for example. And I pitied them. I knew how to help. I was in my jeans, got my mask on. I was prepared and get all the vinegar and all. I was prepared, but I was amazed that these women who have never been on a demonstration before. They were mothers and wives and sisters, and they were just hundreds of women storming the square, getting inside the street where all the fights, and you can see the protesters' faces. They were like, they were amazed, and they just didn't know what to do with us. It's just hundreds of women storming, and they decided to take the lead. Stand on the line of fire to ask the stupid men fighting to stop. And it worked. And that was a turning point to the women who participated and to the men who were watching us trying to stop the bloodshed. And I think this is one of the amazing moments that I was privileged to be part of.
You know, one of the lines in the book says, the moment a woman decides to be unafraid, she is transformed. It sounds like you had several of those moments.
True.
It's very true.
True. Yesterday, we were on a tour in D.C., and we went next to one of the lines that Franklin Roosevelt said, and it's something close to, we only have to fear itself.
Yes.
this is the only thing I have experienced, and I think many of the youth in my generation have experienced this a lot through the last year. In one last comment, I was just telling you, I realized that naturally we're sitting according to the chronological order of revolutions in our countries. Strange. Tunisia, Egypt, Yemen, Libya. It's just really strange.
Well, my last question before we open it up for Q&A is really talking about hope. And a couple of weeks ago, I was privileged to be in a meeting where Aung San Suu Kyi was Skyping in from Burma. And one of the questions was, did you ever lose hope? And without missing a beat, she said, when you're working so hard, there is only hope. Yeah. It's when you're not working, you are hopeless. Yeah. And I want to talk about how each of you are looking at your own work and this symbol or idea or reality of hope. And then we'll open it up for questions. Please,
yes, I agree with her. I mean, we don't have the time to think about problems, fear, and all this stuff. We just work, actually. For hope, I mean, I am in this activism for human rights in Tunisia since I was a teenager, 16 years old. And I learned this thing, which is when I do something, and even before coming here to the stage, I wonder how will I think about what I'm doing 20 years after. I always wondered that. And so when I was working in Tunisia against, Ben Ali, etc., I was always saying, hey, I'm so lucky. I mean, in 20 years, I will be laughing in the faces of the others who haven't opened their mouth. And I would say, hey, I have nothing to reproach to myself. I've done what I had to do. And you, people who were just seeing that man, Ben Ali, and you never wanted to engage, you are now, see how you are now, how you are feeling. And so that's very important. You have to think about how will you consider yourself after. And about hope, actually now, I'm working with the Constitutional Assembly, and I really stupidly believe that Tunisia can have a perfect constitution if we want. And on Twitter, just the other stage, I was tweeting because we drafted our preamble just 2 hours ago.
They never stop working.
And the preamble was, a mess, and I take it as it's a betrayal for the revolution and for the freedom people asked for. And so people were tweeting me saying, hey, you always living in a candy world saying that we can have everything in Tunisia. What do you think about this? I said, this is a draft, and we didn't vote for it. So I have hope, and I think we can change it, even if it's the final draft. And so for my friends, I get this direct message on Twitter, so it's a hidden message, saying, no, but you are completely crazy. How can you, in this moment, think there is any hope with this draft? This is a mess. I said, no, it's not about, stupidity or hope or anything. I have said it yesterday, and I'm still saying it today. If we succeed, it's up to us, and if we fail, it's because of us. I don't think that anyone can help, Tunisia or Libya or Yemen or Egypt, if it doesn't come from us. You cannot bring us the constitution. No one can help us to have a good constitution, or no one can help us to change our minds. We have to work in an international and with every single person who can help. Example of Vital Voices helping us today to have this meeting with you. But still, if the Tunisian and if the Arabs don't work and don't really believe in their countries, I mean, we cannot never ever succeed, and we've seen, I mean, other countries trying to bring, I mean, democracy from elsewhere, and they failed. So that's the hope I have. I think, and I believe that we are not, we Tunisian and Arab, we are not stupid. And it's, I mean, stupidity is not genetic, and we think, and I really believe that we can do it, and I really believe that we don't have the, I mean, it's not a choice, actually. It's not a choice. We have this obligation to succeed, and just because they spoke about women on this revolution. Time magazine called, I mean, the person of the year was the protester. And many people forget Bouazizi wasn't a protester. He was I mean, the flame that helped to trigger this Arab Spring. But the first protester was his mother, and she's a woman. And the first protester of this Arab Spring was a woman. And the second, very funny, is his sister. So when now in this discussion we are speaking, I'm seeing in Tunisia and other countries, our politicians trying to have women in the second plan. Who brought to you this? It's us. So yes, so I think women and we Arabs in general have to have hope in ourselves, and have to believe in ourselves, and have to be responsible toward our children and the children of others, and toward this flag and this country we are coming from.
I'm going to move through the revolutions and the changes here. Please, Marianne, and then we'll open it up for questions here in a minute. But comment on hope.
Just before I came here, I was thinking of how things are turning around in Egypt, and you may all have heard that we had some stumbles with the Constitution and the Constitution Committee, and with the parliament, the parliamentary elections, and the parliament turned out to be a big failure. And then the presidential elections, the first round, resulted in 2 unwanted candidates, unfortunately. And then, so, I mean, the second round are not just going to be anything better unless a miracle happened. I was not thinking about hope, but I was thinking about the wrong turn. Where did we make the wrong turn? And since when it turned from a revolution into politics, it went out of the revolutionaries' hands. And the ball was taken by politics, by politicians, which we all know. And I don't want to call them names, but when politicians take the lead, the dirty games start. But yesterday, one of the sessions, and I was watching a live feed from the square, and it brought tears to my eyes because I couldn't believe that thousands have taken the square again. I've lost hope. When it comes to taking the square again after elections, I didn't think it was possible, but people never stop. Amaze us. Thousands, as we speak, where my heart is at the moment, thousands are taking the streets again, demanding for justice and demanding for real freedom and democracy, and reminding the leaders of our country, whoever they are, that we're not going to have another dictatorship, and reminding the whole world, all the governments of the world, that if you want to be friends with the Arabs, stop befriending the leaders, because we have proven that no regime is going to stay for another 30 years, no matter how dictatorship it is, and that governments won't last. The final word is always said by the people. And you can search Twitter for a live feed from Tahrir Square just to see. I was showing you yesterday. I was very proud because the final word will be said by the people all the time, no matter how dictatorships, military, Islamist, you name it, we can conquer it. Yeah.
I lost hope so many times, but I think by now I know that what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. I lost hope when, in February 21st, 2012, when everybody wanted to vote for a one-candidate election, and that's stupid. It doesn't happen anywhere else, and that they put almost $50 million on that elections. Although we are facing a huge poverty, and the situation after 2011 was really bad. And then they just thought that they still can use all the country's money for one candidate election. That's one of the moments that I lost hope. I lost hope when a mistake happens by the revolutionaries themselves, by some groups of the revolutionaries. When in April 2011, when women protesters were attacked by Islamists after Ali Abdullah Saleh gave a speech on the first Friday of April that year. He said that it's Islamically not allowed for women to be protesting in the streets with men. So Islamists actually were kind of touched by that stupid line, and they tried to prevent us from having mixed marches, and we decided then that we will not be told what to do or how to protest, or we're not, basically they treat us, all the politicians in Yemen, they treat us as women activists, they treat us as if we're objects that they can just move by remote control. So whenever they want us to protest, we're there. They press on, and then whenever they want us to stop, that's how they thought. But unfortunately, change is not happening that way. Once we know the way, no one can stop us. And the other moments that I lost hope is when people in the square chanted and danced twice, once in March 21st last year and once in June 6th last year, once when Major General of the 1st Armored Division of the Army, one of the most known figures and the most powerful figure in the military, decided to defect Ali Abdullah Saleh, and they chanted that the guy is Ali Abdullah Saleh hand in the country, and he's known for corruption, and he's known for all the injustice he brought. How could we dance that he is defecting Ali Abdullah Saleh today? We're just having this corruption among us. And then the June 6th, when Ali Abdullah Saleh himself was wounded in the explosion in his palace, and people were happy. Some people were chanted about that, and then I thought that we're protesting for human rights, for a civil society. I don't want him to get shot and get killed. I want him to stand in front of me in the court, and I want him to be prosecuted, and I want him to listen to all the injustice that he brought and all the tragedies that he did. So.
Thank you. Yeah. And the last word about hope.
Hope.
And then I just will invite others to the microphones while you're...
I want to tell you the truth. Sometimes I'm very optimistic. Sometimes I'm not. Our country is unique because for 42 years there's no civil societies, there's no media, there's no parties, there is nothing during 4 decades. So we have to rebuild our country from scratch, to rebuild rational, viable economic, for the first time now we are preparing ourselves for the first election after 60 years. It will be in the 19th of June for appointing people to write our constitution. So this is the first time we didn't know anything about the constitution. Most of the majority of our population, they didn't know anything about the constitution. So for us, we have to start from scratch. And we have many contradictions and confrontation in some of our cities. And because of the poor performance of the NTC, the National Transitional Council, sometimes we felt that we are desperate. But we know that because of that we sacrificed our men's, the men's and the youth sacrificed their lives for the civil liberties, for human rights, and the rule of law, guided and guarded by Constitution. Because of that, we have to go forward, and there is no backward for us. And now we are looking for our national Congress. It will be after 2 weeks, and now we are more optimistic because after that we start to rebuild our country. But because it's a heavy burden for us, we can't rebuild our country by ourselves. I want to tell it, and because we need the experiences from the others.
And your partners here.
Yeah.
I'm going to stop there because we have many questions and little time, and I'm going to ask each of you to say your question, and then our final wrap-up will be their answers. We're going to start on this side, and then we'll go to the left. Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Susan Bashai, and I'm from Partners for Democratic Change, and I thank all four of you for sharing your stories. My question is for Marianne. Earlier in the first panel, we heard about how minorities, women, can engage the majority, men. So my question is specifically with regards to Egypt and your group, which is Interfaith. How have minority groups, or have you been harnessing the power of other minority groups? So in Egypt, there are religious minorities like Copts, Baha'is, then there's also Nubians, ethnic groups. So do you make coalitions across other minorities to stand together? Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi. I don't know if it's just me, but I think Dr. Knest is a ringer for Diane Rehm, PBS. A great panel. If you allow me to make some sweeping generalizations and
introduce yourself.
Oh, sorry, Nicholas Demeter, gender enthusiast, international development. And also to speak on behalf of all the men in the room, which I think there's 5 of us.
There are a few more, but
more? Great. What we need are more women leaders, not just for all the examples that you've given. And we know that women are great role models to bring other women into power. The first panel seemed to be a panel of we've got women leaders, and the second panel seemed to be we need some women leaders, or rather role models. I would love to be a fly in the room when these groups are together, when these women are together, to talk about what are the barriers, how can we get these 4 women to be the next Ellen Johnson Sirleaf and Ms. Bhutto. And there was one woman from Samoa, I can't pronounce her name, she's a queen. Anyway, there you go. So how can that happen? What are the barriers, and this question is for any of you, to get more women into power so that men can see them as a role model as well, and provide a vehicle for men to get involved in politics, because they need those first women leaders to break the seal. Thanks.
Thanks, Nick. Please.
Hi, this is Muna from Kuwait. First of all, thank you for being such a strong woman. My question is for Ms. Salwa from Libya. In this program, I'm in a program called Leaders for Democracy, and I heard a lot of people saying Libya didn't have a revolution. I want you know, a lot of people are listening to you, and I wish if you can tell us how Libya had a revolution. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have something here? Yes. Huh?
Hi, my name is Ellen Reynolds. I'm from Metropolitan State University of Denver. And I was wondering, as far as women leaders go, what is the one quality that the next generation needs to take with them to continue the change?
Great question, thank you. And our final question, and then I'm turning it over to the panelists.
Hi, I'm Kate Sierra. I'm from the International Women's Democracy Center. Our whole mission is to empower women to get involved in their political process. And this question is specifically for Salwa. What's going on in Libya to get women involved in the government? Like, are there NGOs there? What are women themselves doing? And like, how do you plan to address that, given that you yourself did protest the fact that women were not involved enough?
Thank you. We have just a few minutes left, and I know you each have to go somewhere else. So I'm going to ask you to make your final comments and comment on any of these excellent 5 questions. And I'll start with you very briefly and move.
Yes, of course. First of all, I want to tell you that we had a revolution. We had a great revolution. We sacrificed, we had more than 30,000 of our brave men died through the revolution, and thousands of amputees. So if we ask the United Nations to help, it's our right, because we are a member in the United Nations. The second thing that I'm talking about, the women's participation. I assume that you know that we have to work for that, because we have to change the mentality. We have to planning a strategy for that in the media. We have to change our curriculums in the schools, because there's no leader figure in the curriculums. So we have to long process. I know that it will not be the road. It will not be smooth, and we can't achieve tomorrow overnight. But we will work. The women's everywhere. I want to tell you that estimated in universities, Benghazi and Tripoli, that the most educated people there is female, 65% more than the men, even in all the schools. Number 2 is who led the civil society now. Most of the 70% led by women. So the women's there. We have a very strong working force women in our country. The women's everywhere, because the education guaranteed by our constitution in 1951 by our king. So because of that, we have the base that we can build. The woman will be there, we are sure, and I'm really proud of my Libyan. We are Libyans. We have now many candidates running for the election, and most of them, they knew by heart that they will not win, but they want to send message for the men that they will be there. They are strong, and they are brave, and we are proud of them.
Thank you, Salwa. Thank you.
I would say I come from a very conservative society, men-dominated society, and it's not only the society that it's men-dominated, even our mentality. You will find women against women, women activists against other women activists. We did in March this year, we called for a conference that gathers and unifies the women activists in Yemen to force the government coalition to consider us while rewriting the constitution. And the Prime Minister stood there and said, I'm not going to give you anything from my pocket. You have to come and gain your rights, and you're not going to do that until you're unified and you're having one voice. But then how to change that if the women themselves were raised that they're not equal enough, and they don't deserve to be there, and they cannot be involved in the political process. You have to change the mentality first to bring to empower women. And I don't think that it's any different. It's not only because we are a conservative society. I think it's not any different in anywhere in the, it's a universal issue. In the US, they say, act like a lady, think like a man. Why can you not act like a lady and think like a lady? And you're still smart.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think women's issue is everywhere. And the only thing that we have in addition to the women's trouble in the world is using religious to mislead women on what they can do and what they can't do.
Yes. Thank you, Shafwa. Marianne, last comments.
I want first to respond to Susan regarding the minority groups. We are not a minority group. We're actually the group that we formed. It was started by an initiative called Candor and Reconciliation. It was a group of Copts and Muslims together, because we always believe that if you don't engage the majority, the other side of any issue or any conflict, it's not going to work. And that's what we did. We gathered a group of Muslims and of Christians to sit and talk together. Regarding other minority groups, and there's a little of a big difference for Egyptians when it comes to Copts and Baha'is, when it comes to numbers. Egyptians are a bit focused on Muslims and Christians because they are the largest bulks of people. We're still a bit far from discussing freedom of expression and freedom of belief. But we are working on that, trying to get there. But what we're trying to do is that we prepared the tools for dialogue, and we made them open source, so anyone can use them, can adapt them, and can make the changes they can, and adapt them to any dialogue process, because the first conflict resolution steps you need to do is by dialogue. The second point I want to comment on is how to create more women leaders in the region. I would say that supporting and encouraging political participation is not enough anymore. The most important thing from my perspective is support teenage girls, young girls, and spread culture and enlightenment in unprivileged areas. Outside in Egypt, outside Cairo, in the countryside, if you have a cultural center in every village, I would say that you will never have terrorism, you would never have sectarianism, you would never have extremism, and because this is what music and culture does to the soul. Just put it there and let it evolve, and people will change. Don't impose changes, and just don't deal with the surface. Try to encourage, and this is what we're trying to do, to encourage young women to come out and just be themselves.
Thank you, Marianne. And Amir, yes. Amir, you have the last word here today. Yes.
Yes, I will answer your question, sir. I'm very happy to see men in this room. I hate speaking about women issue only between us women. It's not only our issue, it's a human rights issue, and I personally consider myself first as a human being and as a Tunisian before considering myself as a woman, and I refuse to see a difference between me and men. And I think that's part of the solution. Stop thinking we are different in our minds first. Secondly, I think that in this time of change in the Arab world and in this time of rebuilding the country, which is very important, is to really think that we have 2 years now in these 4 countries to set the basement, which are the law basements. For example, in the Constitution, we are really working to not have this word of inequality between men and women in the Constitution. Still, a law can be written and can be very good and perfect, but if you don't use it, and if it's not used in the country, it's just a waste of time. So how can we use it? I think, and that's what I say in Tunisia, I think that before even having the law, we should apply it as if we had already this law. We should apply this gender equality, and we should have it in our minds, and it will be in the Constitution, and after that we will use it. The third thing is about women in politics. because maybe I don't agree with my friends here, but I really believe in politics. I really believe that politics can change things. And I really believe, because I'm of this generation, very speed generation, tweeting and everything. I think that politics is the fastest way to reach the change. So I think women have absolutely to engage themselves in politics. And how, you can ask me how you, for example, here, American, can you help us? Yes, this revolution gave us too much pride, and I would say, yeah, we will do it by our own, we don't need your help. But no, I was in New York for the UN Security Council on the status of women. And I was shocked by the officials, the Tunisian official group. They were only men, and no one from this democratic country asked, where are the women in your delegation? And I think for example, the US and the other democratic countries, when you come to our countries and you come see our official delegation, you come see our president, ask to see women, ask to, where are the women? Ask for that each time you have an Arab in front of you. Where are the women? Why aren't they involved with you?
On that note, Desmond Tutu said some years ago that we need these kind of leaders to retain our faith in the future. I think we just have a vision of the future here today. Thank you all. You've been a fabulous audience, and we're going to say goodbye.